Procurement Strategies During and After the Pandemic with Jean-Louis Moreau, Experienced Chief Procurement Officer, Procurement Consultant in Operations, Technology, and Finance. Good evening, Moreau. Thank you for coming.
Good evening, all. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Moreau, please, many cases of supply chain shortage around the world. And having more than one supplier means that you can increase the let's see, the contingencies, the protection.
Yes, in fact, it's not the number of supplier. What we've learned during the pandemic, it's not the number of supplier that matters. It's the location of the supplier. We used to have a lot of supplier in Southeast Asia, like China, India, but all those areas were really affected during the pandemics, and in fact, it started there. So we started with late deliveries from China or no delivery from China, and then the pandemic moved to Europe and then to the US and Canada and Brazil. So we've been very disrupted. So the number of suppliers is one thing, but most of all, it's the location of the supplier. So what we aim at right now is to have supplier in Asia, in Europe, and in America, I would say, North or South America. So we try to balance suppliers in those three areas. That's the case.
That's the point.
But it takes a lot of technology because you want to source from the right supplier at the right time. So it's called resilience. It's a buzzword that we've learned during the pandemics. We need resilience, but resilience has a cost. And with respect to supplier, when you develop 2 or 3 suppliers, it has a cost. Like if you have toolings, or even the just to follow a supplier has a cost. So it's a cost that we should take. In fact, after the pandemic, we know that the risk is real.
Real higher.
It's much higher. Yeah. Much higher than before.
Than before, and we do not know after that what can we face.
No, and I could say that among my clients, a big thing now is risk management. We used to do risk management, but it was kind of informal, or it was kind of just with 1 or 2 supplier, very strategic supplier. But now the request from my client is always, we need a thorough risk assessment with analytics and real screening of all types of risk. It could be
trying to measure the risk for each item,
yes.
Each important item.
Well, we measure the impact. First, it identify the risk. So, do we have a risk of a flood, a fire, a pandemic? So, when they identify all the risk, we calculate the probability of occurrence of the risk. And in the case of a pandemic, the probability was very low. Now it has jumped through the roof.
Yeah,
so the risk, the probability, and then the impact. If the risk is materialized, then we need to measure what is the impact if the risk occurs. And then once we have those 3 things, we have a risk level. And we have a look at how is it handled, who is managing the risk. So we try to assign a risk to someone, or someone is in charge of such and such risk, and he has to find prevention measures. And in some cases, we transfer the risk like an insurance, Insurance, we transfer the risk, but the pandemic, there's no one who will, will insure that.
The idea is to reduce risks and at the same time mitigate impact if he comes.
Yes. Measure the risk level and then mitigate, and have an action plan to mitigate it. And it's reviewed every quarter. Now the risk is a very big part of my work, risk management.
And Moreau, in generally speaking, of course, your perception is the companies are prepared for that, trained for that, for procurement strategies and for logistic options.
Some companies were prepared, like in the automotive sectors. Automotive sector, most of all, they were prepared. In companies like Apple and the technology company, they were also very well prepared because that's historical. The automotive sector and other industrial sectors used to be very vertically integrated. Okay, so they started to outsource slowly, but the automotive sector had already outsourced most of it. But the technology company, they've never been manufacturing anything. No, they started directly with outsourcing, so they were well prepared for that. Companies like Apple have very small disruption in their supply chain because they have a very resilient supply chain, and they have also the weight of their company with the supplier. No one will tell Apple, "Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not able to deliver."
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
they were better prepared than anyone else. But government were not prepared. We've seen that. Public companies were not well
We're not
prepared
prepared.
either.
And the oil and gas companies.
Oil and gas company, I don't have much knowledge about that. What happened, during the pandemic. So I don't know. You may be able to tell me more.
No, not too much prepared. They are trying to, let's see, touch the problems ongoing, but it's not like the technology companies that you mentioned that
Yeah.
are very well prepared, because the rupture is very, very, let's see, complicated for them. The oil and
Yes.
gas
Yes.
are different. They manage in a different way. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and oil and gas company, just like other legacy old industrial companies, they have a history of vertical integration. So they're used to do a lot of things themselves. So they've been outsourcing, but very slowly. They've not evaluated all the risk within their supply chain. So it has been
But
difficult.
in the oil and gas is interesting because nowadays a company, a very big company from Europe, Equinor, we can mention, is a good promotion for them.
Yeah.
They hired they hired some oil field activities from three companies: Halliburton, Schlumberger, and Baker. At the same time, they put different quantities for each one,
Yeah.
exactly to have the three companies working at the same time for them. So it's a kind of contingency prospect.
Yes, that helps. That helps. And you mentioned Schlumberger. I know very well Schlumberger because I've worked for them. Even back 30 years ago, they were already mitigating that kind of risk by having three development centers and three manufacturing centers: one in Japan, one in Paris, and one in Houston, Texas.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
nothing new.
Nothing new, exactly. 30 years and it's the
Yeah.
same. The mindset is the same. But Moho, the bullwhip effects. Can procurement help a little bit to manage this kind of?
Yes, yeah, and we've seen that also during the pandemic. So if you want to manage that and mitigate the bullwhip effect, you need to increase the horizon of the visibility. You need some time. So in order to do that, what you need to do is to manage not only your tier one supplier, but you need to manage tier two and three. You need to know to make sure that the supplier of your supplier of your supplier is delivering the right thing at the right place at the right time. So if you have that visibility, and it's possible with technology, but if you have that visibility, then you'll be able to anticipate much more than we've seen in the past month. Yeah, yeah. So you need increased visibility, but it needs technology, and it has a cost. Again, resilience has a cost.
Yeah, it means
Yeah.
cost. So we prepared means cost, but less cost then we have a problem,
Yeah,
and you
sure.
cannot solve the problem.
Yeah.
Interesting. Moho, you mentioned some points of resource. I mean, sourcing points and different locations of the source. What's your vision for reshoring that the United States are talking a lot about? That it's very complicated because it's some kind of protection sometimes, maybe protection or not. And how do you see? Is it possible to go on in reshoring?
Yes, to some point. What we've seen, the pandemic was global, so we had a global problem, and in that case, it's a global problem that has local solutions in many cases. So we've seen that in Canada too. We had to reshore a lot of things, even from the US. The US stopped delivering things to Canada. So there is among governments and among companies, private companies and public companies, there is a willingness to ensure at least the basics close to where it's needed, you know. So reshoring is a reality now. You may continue to source from China, but then you will have an alternate supplier to which maybe you will give 20% of the volume, but you will have a well-prepared supplier next door or close to next door.
Close next door, yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And it's true for at least for the governments. So we've seen that it's true for agricultural products, medicines, medical supply, all that kind of thing that missed, you know, we missed everything, you know, during the pandemic. So
it was based on the crisis that we had in the past.
Oh yeah. So China sent us the virus, and then they sent us the product to fight it. You know, just
vaccines, and so they do everything. Yeah. If you can ask you the recommendations you have for the procurement team in terms of post-pandemic, what are you have some posts about that? Could you please share with us something?
Yes, and I will send you I can share my screen if it's possible. I don't know how it works, but
there is a share screen button very in the center of the.
Yes, okay, the green one here.
Yeah.
And I can share that one.
You need to.
No, it's okay. I'm sure you see it, and I can put it in.
Presentation
big
mode. Yeah, perfect.
Yes. So what we've seen, you know, is all the Western economies, you know, and it's Europe and America. It's another dependence on China and other low labor cost country like India and others, you know. And it's even more true for depending on the sector. You know, the automotive sector is more spread all over America, Europe, and Asia, but some other sectors are fully dependent on China and Southeast Asia. So that's one thing. We had a lack of redundancy in the supply chain. So that's what I mentioned before. You need more than one supplier, well located. You know, you need to choose to pick the right location and be able to manage a supply chain around those different locations. So you need in real time to manage your supply chain, and that needs technology. You know, you need to be able to pick the right supplier in real time. Mm-hmm. That's one thing. Not enough transparency. That's about what I mentioned about tier 1, 2, 3 suppliers. You know, if you don't know what your tier 3 supplier is doing, you may be already in trouble, although your tier 1 supplier is saying that everything is under control. So you need more visibility, you know, so you increase. Normally in the automotive sector, you have the visibility on tier 1 and 2, but now we've increased to one further notch. You know, we need tier 1, 2, 3. And again, that needs technology to have visibility on those suppliers. So you need to have the right network of supplier, including those tier 1, 2, 3. Global problem have local solutions. So we've seen that we've discovered new supplier just next door. We are counting on China and India, and then we had to rediscover the industrial supplier just close to Canada or to the US. You know. And even supplier in the US were very far away from Canada at that time. So we found local solution to global problems. As I mentioned, technology is vital to manage flexible supply chain networks. So those supply chain networks that I mentioned before, you know, with the tier 1, 2, 3 supplier, you need the appropriate technology. And if you have money to put somewhere in procurement, it needs to be in technology right now.
What are the technologies you are talking about?
Well, supply chain management, you know, all those supply chain management with blockchain. You know, we're talking about blockchain technology. That's the kind of technology that we need to implement in procurement right now.
Perfect.
Even for payment and contracting, we can use it also, blockchain for that. You avoid all the problem, because also the problem with China is you need to pay in advance most of the time. So you throw your money there and you don't know what will come back. So you need that kind of technology that makes sure that everyone has a look at what has been paid, what has been dispatched, when and where it is on the sea, or which aircraft or which vessel.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So you need that kind of technology. The consequence of that, there is a cost to resilience. So resilience is the buzzword that appeared with the pandemic. You need resilience, and it's true, and there is a cost to that, but it's much lower than any problem that you may you may have with another global pandemic. And task number one for all procurement team is to make a risk assessment. So they need to revisit the risk assessment, make sure that they have analytical methods to assess the risks. So it's list the risk, assess the impact, the probability of occurrence, and the impact. Once you have that, then you can have an action plan and assign someone responsible of this of the plan and fix the problem.
Yeah.
So
Very
those are
good.
the lesson that we've learned, and everyone has learned that, and are taking actions right now to implement solutions to fight the same kind of global problem that we had.
Global
And
problem.
also, what we learn is when the problem is global, there's nothing much to do. you know,
Uh-huh.
it hits everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. These points, these lessons learned. Very good. Excellent. Yeah. If you do not have any other slide, please could you please stop
Yeah.
sharing?
I will
Yeah.
stop sharing.
Stop sharing.
Up.
Yes. Perfect.
Good.
Perfect. I suppose we touch every important point in the procurement scene that we have nowadays in terms of pandemic phase. That's a very hard time we have, and the post-pandemic, because we need to be prepared for the normal, the new normal. If you have a new
Yes.
normal
Yes.
or
Yes.
new
Yes.
abnormal, we do not know now. Excellent. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you here Moho, today. And you are an expert in procurement. So we see every post that you put in the LinkedIn. Is a pleasure to follow you.
Okay. My pleasure was for me.
Excellent. Have a good day. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.